I honestly don't think that the ZV-E1 gets enough love as it truly should. And don't get me wrong, even I thought that this camera wasn't going to be the best at first whenever it first came out. But now looking at it after using it for all this time, I can honestly say that this camera hasn't been getting the flowers that it deserves. So today I'm going to give you the reasons as to why the ZV-E1 should get more love than it does. So let's just go into the first thing. This camera's specs to price ratio is unreal. This basically is a baby between the Sony a7S III and the FX3. And those cameras come in at $3,500 and $3,800. So whenever you have a camera like this at $2,200 with the specs of those cameras, it's kind of wild to me. You get a camera that has dual native ISO at 640 and 12,800 whenever you're shooting an S-Log3. Something like that is great because you have the range from shooting any time of day, but also shooting at nighttime when light is very, minimal and not as available whenever you're trying to get those video content that you might need to, where you don't get as much noise. You have a camera that can shoot 4K 24 frames per second, so you can get that nice cinematic mode style of frame rates, as well as a 4K 60 where you can slow it down just so nicely, but you can further slow it down at 4K 120 frames per second in 4K with 10-bit color, which is unreal to have that for all the specs into this camera whenever it comes down to shooting in 4K for that nice resolution. And you even get to shoot at 240 frames per second at 1080p, which is kind of nice to have in such a compact body, but also that is at the price point of $2,200 when you buy it new. One of the cool things about this camera is you get their new updated AI autofocus. You get to have the human, animal to bird, just the animal, just the bird. You get a little bit of an insect, you got car and train, and airplane, which is really cool to have that because you now know that you're gonna have the best autofocus into your subject so you don't miss a beat whenever you're trying to create faster turnarounds. Another cool thing about faster turnarounds is to be able to have your custom LUT right here. You're able to put them into it to see how the image will look in camera to get it as best as possible so that in the post-processing, it won't take you as long to edit or anything of that sort. And a cool thing as well that you can do is put the custom LUT baked into your footage if you want to do a faster turnaround. I've actually made a video about that before to show you the difference of how the quality might be, but it's really cool to have that option within a camera of this caliber. This camera is a small and compact camera, like I said, that is just great for video and even some photo despite the megapixel count. But in all honesty, I know that it's not the cheapest camera out there for the price point that it comes in and everything, but for all this video specs that you get in this camera, like in Sony a7S III and the Sony FX3 that are $3,500 and $3,800, it's kind of wild to get that in this camera where I don't really know any other camera brand that has something to this caliber. So going forward, we're gonna be recording with the ZV-E1 to show you the performance of this camera, to sell you on it. With this camera, I've been able to travel the world to document some cool things with just a compact body with high quality videos. So yeah, I was able to use this camera for all conditions, whether it was so sunny like how it is right now, or as well as low light capabilities whenever I'm out and about because of the sensor that it is like my Sony a7S III. See, I love having multiple frame rates available to me with the 4K 24 frames per second being my main one because I like to have that cinematic feel of things in real time. But having access to all the frame rates with S-Log3 to get the most dynamic range that I want to with this camera is quite solid, especially because if I want to shoot at 4K 24 frames per second, I get the nice dynamic range, but also all the way to the 120 frames per second. So I'm gonna show you that real quick. See, 24 frames per second is great because you're able to just document more real time to be able to get some nice, just realistic footage without having to slow it down so that it's just more what we see in the real life effect, essentially. It's a really cool thing to be able to slow things down with the 4K 60 because it slows it out just enough where it doesn't feel like it's too slow, but if you ever need to slow down even further, shooting at 4K 120 frames per second to really slow down things with having great quality at 4K is really cool. And like I said, the greatest thing about it is you can use the slow motion still in low light because you have that 12,800 ISO that allows you to get enough information in low light with a nice range. Obviously, we're in the bright sunny day, but trust me, I've used it enough that you can do it. And if you like to travel and don't want to have to bring a lot of gear, having the dynamic stabilization that this camera provides to be able to just walk and do handheld shots more stabilized is pretty great, so you can condense down when you travel. And this camera has also served me as a one-stop shop kind of type of camera to be able to just condense down if I know I'm gonna be needing more video than photos. Like I said, it's a great photo camera still, with 12 megapixels being more than enough if you just need something quick and about, especially better than your phone in my honest opinion, because as much as I love phone photography, I never feel inspired by it. But having a camera like this that is compact, even with a 20-70 f4, because you get good range, maybe not the aperture in that aspect, but you get to have a camera that if I know I'm gonna be shooting more video that could lead into the low light capabilities of, nighttime or evening time, I'm gonna choose to bring this one over my Sony a7C Mark II, despite of the same size, or maybe my Sony a7 IV, especially if I wanna prioritize a little bit more the video part. So I'm gonna give you my reasoning as to why I think people didn't wanna give the love to this camera as much as they should have. They thought the price of this camera was too high for what you were getting out of it. Although this camera could have been probably priced less due to the factor of the build that it feels more plasticky compared to like a Sony a7S III, FX3, or even the a7 IV. In all honesty, for the price to the spec ratio, it just kind of makes sense for what you're getting out of it, but I can understand when people see this camera to see that $2,200 might be a little bit steep. See, if we have the ZV-E1 next to the Sony a7S III, you can see the difference in the body right away. This looks more plasticky, while this one has a little bit more of that firm grip and everything that you can have within a camera. Of course, having a little bit higher end type of body compared to the ZV-E1 is gonna be priced a lot higher than it would be with the ZV-E1. Obviously, this is not gonna be $100 compared to $10, but it's just to, showcase a little bit of the difference in pricing. And of course, some people might not like that it doesn't have a mechanical shutter whatsoever. It's really just the sensor, and you take the photo a little bit more like that, versus the a7S III having the mechanical shutter, and I think as well the FX3. But having the difference in these bodies, even with the Sony a7C Mark II compared to the ZV-E1 that they're both compact, I can understand why people might not like the body size of this with the feel of it, because it might feel more plasticky compared to higher end material that even the a7C Mark II has more similarities to this than to this. But I'm gonna share with you a little bit of the reasons why people should still show some love to the ZV-E1 despite its flaws. Yes, the material of this body isn't the highest material, but with that being said, it makes it become so light and compact to be able to travel so nicely with it while still having a full frame camera with great video specs. Since this camera does not have a viewfinder that I know some people might not like, but due to it being more video centered, it makes it feel like an FX3 more, because that camera doesn't also have a viewfinder. So I'm okay with that, because it just feels more like a video camera that still takes some decent photos. Because despite not having a mechanical shutter that could help out to have maybe a better readout for photos, it still takes really great photos that I honestly have used it quite a bit to just document some memories quick and about, or if I'm on a pinch to take good photos without thinking that I won't get high quality photos. And yes, the pricing on this might not be the most enticing for some, but if you can do it like how I did, get it either at a discount rate whenever they have some discounts, or get it used, because that's what I did for myself, where I got it for like $1,800, it makes it worth it. Because I'm actually curious to know what camera can do with all the specs that this camera has for the compact body and everything for the price point, because if you can find something like that, I would love for you to direct me to it. That would really just be awesome, because I can't seem to find it, and for what you get out of this camera, I think it's worth the price to invest in yourself. So I personally think that we should give this camera its flowers, because for what it truly is, the ZV-E1 has been a camera that was hated on even by myself from the start, but after using it, it has been one of the best cameras that I've been able to use for the form factor, for the full frame, for the compactability, and as well for the specs that you get out of the price point. I think this camera is going to be great for you if you've been debating about getting it, due to the fact that the video specs on this have been phenomenal. Maybe if you're wanting to get more photo-centered camera, the a7C Mark II will be a great option, but I don't think this camera needs to get the hate that it's been getting, because it can really do such amazing things for a compact body for almost half the price point of what the FX3 is, with having the same video specs and having the in-camera custom LUTs with the AI chips. So that's just my opinion. This is the reason why I wanted to do this video, to showcase why we should give the flowers to this camera. So what do you think about the Sony ZV-E1? Is it a camera that is worth to get its flowers, or is there something better for the price point that you can get better video specs and photo capabilities for the same price point and compact body size? I know that there's a Lumix S9 that's a compact body type of style, but the specs video for that are not in par with what you get out of this one. Not saying that the Lumix S9 is a bad camera, but I'm just just comparing it more into the price point for what you're getting out of the specs with 4K 120 all the way through and having a lot of those, upgrades that you can get in this camera? Or do you think that people should not bother with this camera whatsoever? And really, what are the alternatives out there that you can get for a really good price point like this for the specs? I would love to know your thoughts on that end, because it's just something that I've always wanted to consider more into it whenever I've been asked about this camera. What can I recommend people? So if you have a better alternative, please comment it down below. Would love to know your thoughts on that end. But yeah, this is a great camera. I've been loving it ever since I've owned it. It has its pros and cons like every camera out there, but I think it needs to get its love that it deserves because it's a great camera for the price point with the specs to ratio. But if you have any questions about this camera, please leave them down below. I would love to help you out in your quest of maybe obtaining this camera if it's the right one for you. And you never know. It might be the one that you fall in love with, or maybe you find something better that people might recommend down in the comments. But with all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, share this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you.